Welcome back to her secret diaries. A place where untold stories find their voice, where silence breaks, and truth finally gets its moment. Tonight's story is not just about a dinner table. It's about years of swallowed words, unspoken pain, and one moment that changed everything. It all started with a simple sentence. "Mom, please. Just stay quiet tonight." That's what my daughter said to me, and for a moment, I almost listened. You know that feeling when your own child looks at you like you're inconvenient, like your presence needs to be managed, softened, controlled. That was the moment we were sitting in a beautifully decorated dining room. Soft lighting, perfect table setting, guests laughing politely. Everything looked like a picture-perfect evening, but underneath that polished surface, there was tension, the kind that builds over years. The kind you don't see in photos. My daughter Aisha had invited me to dinner with her in-laws. It was important to her. I could tell. She kept adjusting things, her dress, the plates, even my shawl. Like she was trying to make everything just right. Or maybe just acceptable. Before the guests arrived, she pulled me aside. Her voice was calm, but firm. "Mom, please don't talk too much tonight. Just smile and let me handle things." It wasn't the first time, but it hurt like it was. I looked at her. Really looked at her. This girl I raised. This woman standing in front of me. Confident, polished, composed, and somehow distant. I nodded, because that's what mothers do, right? We swallow things. We make ourselves smaller. We adjust. Dinner began. Conversations flowed. Her husband's family was charming, well-spoken, the kind of people who knew exactly what to say and when to say it. And me. I sat there quietly, smiling, nodding, playing the role I was assigned. But inside, something was shifting at first. It was small. A tiny discomfort. Like wearing shoes that don't quite fit. Then it grew. Every time someone spoke about family values. Every time someone praised how well-adjusted Aisha was. Every time she laughed at jokes that erased parts of her past. Parts of us. That discomfort became something heavier. Because I remembered the nights I stayed awake. When she was sick, the days I worked double shifts just to pay her school fees. The sacrifices no one at that table knew about. Or cared to know. And the more I remembered, the quieter I became. But silence has a limit. It always does. Then came the moment. Someone asked a simple question. "So, where did Aisha grow up?" It was innocent, harmless. But I saw it. That quick glance she gave me. That silent warning. Stay quiet. And for a second, I almost smiled and let her answer with her carefully crafted version of the truth. The polished one. The acceptable one. The one that erased struggle. That erased me. But something inside me finally said no. I took a breath, and I spoke. "She grew up in a one-room house," I said calmly. "With a leaking roof. And a mother who didn't always know how she'd make it to the next day." The room went quiet. Not awkward. Just still. Like everyone was trying to understand if they heard me correctly. Aisha froze. Her smile disappeared just slightly. But I didn't stop. Because once the truth starts coming out, it doesn't whisper, it pours. She used to study under a dim light because we couldn't afford better. And sometimes, she'd pretend she wasn't hungry so I could eat. I wasn't angry. I wasn't loud. I was just honest. And honesty can be uncomfortable. Her in-laws exchanged glances, not judgmental. Just surprised. Because this wasn't the version they knew. This wasn't the story they were told. Aisha finally spoke. "Mom, please." That one word. Please. But it wasn't a request. It was a plea to go back into silence, to undo what I had just done. But I couldn't, because for the first time in years, I wasn't speaking to impress anyone. I was speaking because my story mattered too. "I'm not embarrassing you," I said softly. "I'm telling the truth." And there it was. The line that changed everything. The rest of the dinner. It was different. quieter, more careful. But something had shifted, not just in the room, in us, when we got home that night. She didn't speak to me at first. She walked around, tidying things that didn't need tidying, avoiding me, and I let her. Because I knew this conversation needed space. Finally, she turned to me. Her eyes weren't angry. They were conflicted. "Why would you say all that?" she asked Dotton that question. It carried years of distance. I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth, it's not always simple. I said it because it's real, I replied. Because our past isn't something to hide. She sighed. "You don't understand." I was trying to make a good impression. And there it was. Impression.image.perception. Things that matter so much. Until they cost you your truth. "I understand more than you think," I said. "But I also understand what it feels like to disappear." That hit her. I could see it. Because maybe she hadn't realized it before. That in trying to build her perfect world, she was slowly erasing the one that built her. We stood there in silence for a moment. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was necessary. "I wasn't ashamed of you," she said quietly. And I believed her. But I also knew. Sometimes, we don't need to feel shame to create distance. "I know," I replied. "But you were afraid of what people would think." She didn't argue. Because she couldn't. And maybe she didn't need to. That night didn't fix everything. It didn't magically bring us closer. But it did something more important. It made things real. Over the next few days, something changed between us. Small things. Conversations became more honest, less filtered. She started asking about things she used to avoid. Our past, our struggles. Our story. Not because she had to, but because maybe she was finally ready. One evening, she sat next to me and said something I didn't expect. "I think I was trying to protect myself," she admitted, and that made sense, because sometimes we reshape our past not to erase it, but to survive it. "I just didn't want people to look at me differently," she added. And I nodded, because that fear, it's real, but so is the cost. "And now?" I asked. She smiled slightly. "I think I want people to know the truth." That moment, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt peaceful, like something had finally settled. Weeks later, we had another dinner. Same people, same table. But this time, something was different. There was no warning, no "stay quiet," no silent expectations. When someone asked about her childhood, she looked at me. Not to stop me, but to include me, and she said, "Mom, you should tell them." And I did. But this time, it wasn't about proving anything. It wasn't about breaking silence. It was just sharing, and the room didn't feel tense. It felt human, because truth has a way of doing that. It connects, it grounds, it reminds us that behind every polished story, there's a real one, a messy one, a powerful one. So if you've ever been told to stay quiet, if you've ever felt like your voice needed to shrink to fit someone else's version of the world, maybe it's time to ask yourself one question. What happens if you tell the truth instead? Because sometimes, the moment you break your silence is the moment everything finally starts to heal. Because the truth is, that night didn't just change one dinner, it changed how we saw each other, and more importantly, it changed how I saw myself. For years, I had convinced myself that staying quiet was love, that sacrificing my voice was part of being a good mother, that letting my daughter rewrite parts of our story was just her way of moving forward. But I never stopped to ask, at what cost? You see, silence doesn't just hide pain, it buries identity, and somewhere along the way, I had become a background character in my own life, present, but not heard. Seen, but not acknowledged. And that realization, it doesn't come gently, it hits you in moments like that dinner, moments where you're asked without words to shrink. To fit into a version of yourself that's easier for others to accept. But here's what no one tells you. The longer you stay quiet, the harder it becomes to remember your own voice. After that first dinner, I started noticing things I had ignored for years. The way Aisha would introduce me to people. This is my mom. Simple, polite, but empty. No stories, no connection. No history. Just a title. And for the first time, that felt wrong. Not because I needed praise, but because I existed beyond that word. I was more than just mom. I was the woman who held everything together when life tried to tear it apart. I was the reason she had the opportunities she now carefully curated. And yet, none of that had a place in her world, or at least, that's what I believed. Until things started to shift. It didn't happen overnight. There were still moments of discomfort. Moments where we both slipped back into old patterns, like the afternoon we were shopping together. She picked up a dress, elegant, expensive, the kind of thing she never used to care about. "Do you like it?" she asked. I nodded. "It's beautiful." She smiled, but then hesitated. "It's for an event at my in-laws' place," she said. "A lot of important people will be there." There it was again. That subtle line between her world and the one she came from. And I could have stayed quiet. I could have just smiled and let the moment pass. But something in me had changed. "You don't have to impress anyone by being someone else," I said gently. She looked at me. Not defensive this time. "Just thoughtful." "I know," she replied. "But it's not that simple." And she was right. It's never simple. Because when you spend years building a version of yourself, it becomes hard to separate what's real from what's expected. "Maybe not," I said. "But it starts with being honest about where you come from." She didn't respond immediately, but I could see it. That internal shift, that quiet processing, that slow acceptance. And then something unexpected happened. She put the dress back. Not dramatically, not like a statement, just quietly. "Let's look at something else," she said. And in that moment, I realized something important. Change doesn't always come with big speeches. Sometimes it's in the small decisions. The quiet ones, the ones no one else notices, but they matter. A lot of weeks turned into months. Our relationship started to evolve in ways I never thought possible. We talked more, not just about surface things, but about everything we had avoided for years. One night, she asked me something that caught me off guard. "Did you ever feel alone?" she said. I looked at her, surprised. "Why would you ask that?" She hesitated. "Because I think I did," she admitted, and that moment, it opened a door to conversations we should have had long ago. "I did feel alone," I said honestly. "A lot of the time, not because I wanted to burden her, but because she deserved to know. She deserved the full story, not just the parts that were easy to tell." "I always thought you were strong," she said, and I smiled. But strength doesn't mean you don't struggle. That's the thing people misunderstand. Strength isn't silence. Strength isn't pretending everything is okay. Strength is telling the truth even when it's uncomfortable. And maybe that's what she was starting to understand. One evening, she brought out an old photo album. Something we hadn't looked at in years. Dusty pages, faded pictures, memories frozen in time. "This was our house," she said, pointing to a picture. That one-room house, the leaking roof, the place she once tried to erase. And now, she was holding on to it, not with embarrassment, but with something else. Respect. "I used to hate this place," she admitted. "I know," I said softly. "But now," she continued, "I think it made me who I am." And there it was. The truth she had been running from, finally catching up. And instead of breaking her, it grounded her. We sat there for hours, flipping through memories, laughing, sometimes crying, but most importantly, understanding. For the first time in a long time, we weren't avoiding our past, we were embracing it together. And then came another dinner invitation, same family, same expectations, But this time, everything felt different. As we got ready, she turned to me and said something I never thought I'd hear. "Just be yourself tonight." She said, no hesitation, no conditions, just acceptance. And I smiled, because that was all I ever wanted. Dinner began, and the atmosphere felt lighter, more real, less performed. Conversations flowed naturally. No one was trying too hard. No one was hiding. And then, once again, someone asked about her childhood. But this time, she didn't look away. She didn't deflect. She didn't rewrite. She smiled and said, "I had a simple upbringing, but a strong one." And then she looked at me, not with fear, but with pride. "My mom did everything she could for me," she added, and in that moment, I didn't need to say anything, because the truth had already been spoken by her. The same daughter who once asked me to stay quiet was now giving me a voice, and that meant everything. So if you're listening to this right now, and you've ever felt like your story doesn't fit into someone else's version of perfection, remember this: your truth is not something to hide, it's something to honor, because the people who truly matter won't ask you to stay quiet, they'll ask you to be real. And the moment you find the courage to do that, you don't just change the conversation, you change the relationship, you change yourself, and maybe you even change someone else. Thank you for being part of her secret diaries, where the quietest voices often carry the strongest truths. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been told to shrink, to soften, or to silence yourself, maybe tonight is the night you choose differently, because your voice, it deserves to be heard.